Hey everybody, it's Robert coming to you with another adventure into history. Today I am down in Lamar County, Georgia, and I'm standing here with Lamar County historian Tim Turner. And I've been researching the Milner family. If you've seen previous videos, we located the headstone of a John Hamilton Milner over in Cleola, Georgia. And we've recently been researching the Milner line. The Milners are, of course, ancestors of Joy, who's been on these videos. And we've been researching that Milner family, which has led us here to Lamar County. And we're standing beside the grave of Pit Milner right now. Now, where are we at? Because Pit Milner's not the only one buried here.
He is not. This was a community cemetery. And if you notice, we're up on a hill right here. And Pit Milner's grave is the only marked grave here. There was another guy that I know of that's buried here, John Gardner. His home was across the field over there. And a lady that I did research with back in the 80s told me her grandmother was at the funeral, and when he died, they brought him across the field, buried him up on the hill because he was friends with Pit Milner. But the only marked grave that we have today is, of course, Pit Milner, and this is one of our oldest graves in Lamar County. He dies in 1839. I found this grave, gosh, when I was probably 20, maybe 19 or 20 years old. A lady told me about it and said, I have a grave on my property, and she said, I'd like to show it to you. I said, sure, I'd love to see it. And when I came up here, the cows were all on it and everything. Several years ago, a descendant of Pit Milner came and found me, and I brought him up here, and he put this fence around it. And the current owners that live here, they cut the grass and tend to the hay. But Pit Milner is buried here. He married a lady named Absilla Holmes. She is not buried here. She's buried in Henry County. He had several children that are scattered all over the state of Georgia.
So one of his children is John Holmes Milner, who we'll be seeing later on today, and he was a reverend down here. But then there's also Reverend John Milner, who is his brother, correct?
His brother. They all came from Wilkes County. Reverend John Milner is buried in the Zebulon Street Cemetery in Barnesville. He marries a lady, Eunice Calloway. He came here, he was baptized by the Reverend Jesse Mercer, and he founded the current First Baptist Church in Barnesville.
And we'll see his grave later, but just to confuse things enough, we've got Pit Milner here, we've got his son, John Holmes Milner, his brother, Reverend John Milner, and then his father was Captain John Milner.
Who's buried in Oglethorpe County.
So if you guys at home have gotten confused hearing all of that, I already am. Pit Milner is the son of Revolutionary soldier Captain John Milner. There is family lore that Pit Milner fought in the Revolution with his father, Captain John Milner. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Like I said, it is family lore and was taken from an early publication in the 1840s, if I remember correctly, and a family Bible. It said that Pit Milner was at the Battle of
Kettle Creek,
which happened in 1779. Now, Pit Milner was born in 1769, which would have meant he would have been a 10-year-old boy going off to war. It's not entirely unheard of in the Revolutionary War when you had drummer boys and that sort of thing, but it would make him one of the youngest participants in the Revolutionary War. His name appears on no rolls, no muster rolls, no pension records. So the only thing we have to go on that is family lore. The only way that it would kind of make sense is that the Battle of Kettle Creek happened nearby to Captain John Milner's home, and the thing is that maybe he followed his father to the battlefield and participated in it, which can kind of make sense there. But this is the only headstone that remains in this cemetery, as was stated, in memory of Pit Milner Sr., who departed this life July 21st, 1839, aged 70 years and so many days.
Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord.
So that is one piece of the Milner puzzle here, and to reiterate, we're trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle of John Milner over in Cleola, Georgia, who does have a Revolutionary War headstone. And the reason that Pit Milner is important to that story and that family lore is important is in a letter to the DAR by Richard Clark, who was a son of Hobson Milner, and Hobson was a son of John Hamilton Milner, per that DAR letter. Richard Clark tells the story of John and Pitt fighting in the Revolutionary War together. And we have here another family lore of a Pitt and Captain John fighting in the Revolutionary War together. But that Captain John is not the same John that is being referenced in that DAR letter. So we're trying to put together a mystery and see if the historical facts are right. So I wanted to give a big thank you to Tim for joining us today.
Sure.
He has to head out, so won't be on the rest of the video, but you are president of the Lamar County Historical Society.
The Barnes-Lamar County Historical Society, yes. I started when I was 12 years old doing research. For some reason, I wanted to know who I was related to. And my grandmother always called this lady down the street Cun Ethel. And I thought, surely her name is not Cun Ethel. But in the South, we shorten things. So it was Cousin Ethel, then it became Cun Ethel. And so I thought, well, how are we related to Cun Ethel? And Cun Ethel married Cun Alton. And so we would go see Cun Ethel, and come to find out, we were actually not related to Cun Ethel, but to Cun Alton. So I just started writing down how we were related to people, and I was 12 years old, and it's just stuck with me ever since.
That's awesome.
So,
well, he's been a big help today on researching the Milners, and maybe we'll get together again.
absolutely.
Down here.
Absolutely.
This is a beautiful county. So this is an absolutely incredible headstone right here. We just left the burial site of Pit Milner, who was the brother of Reverend John Milner. Of course, Reverend John and Pitt were the son of Captain John Milner. This is an incredible headstone here. This is one of the nicest and most detailed that I've ever seen. We're in the Zebulon Street Cemetery in Barnesville, Georgia, which is in and of itself an incredible cemetery that we'll have to come back up here and take a closer look at one day. But today we're focusing on the Milners. So I'm going to try to read this headstone to the best that I can. So at the top here it says the Reverend John Milner. Of course, we have this great hand or finger pointing up. And it said John Milner, Reverend John Milner, was born October 17th, AD 1775. He was married to Eunice Calloway December 24th, 1795. They were blessed with sons and daughters whom they raised. The son Willis Joshua, and this is where it gets a little bit difficult to read. I'm going to do my best here. Willis Joshua, Bonaete, Calloway. So that's going to be a daughter. Sarah Walker, Isabel Calloway, Pitt Sanders. So Pitt Sanders is another Pitt Saunders Milner. The daughters on here have their married names. The sons have their middle names, which is absolutely incredible when you've been dealing with a bunch of different Johns and Pitts that all have the same name but with no middle names. This is very detailed. We have Pitt Saunders Milner, Eunice Elizabeth. So she's going to be a Milner because it's got her first and middle name. Benjamin Mosley, Lilio,
maybe? Looks like TLR.
Liliore. Shivers. Jonathan John, we'll talk about him in just a minute. Edward Joshua, and looks like Hiram, Hiram. Amanda Mercer was baptized. So back to Reverend John Milner, was baptized by the Venerable Jesse Mercer, February 22nd, 1812.
And real quick, this is the Mercer, that Mercer College is named after.
Soon thereafter, called in to active usefulness, first as clerk, then deacon, and in 1823, called of the Lord and regularly ordained to the gospel ministry. In every situation, a constant, zealous, and level advocate for the spread of gospel light to all the world, and ever striving for peace and prosperity in the churches. In him the poor and needy ever found a friend. But alas, this man of God, pastor of the Baptist Church at Sardis, Pike County, Georgia, and supply of 5 others, pleading with God for and persuading men to everything for the good of soul and body, and for the glory of his Lord and Master, in the midst of much usefulness and abundant labor, was called from all his toils below to rest with God above on the 27th of January, AD 1841, age 65 years, 3 months, and 10 days. And truly he, being dead, yet speaketh. So that is by far the longest headstone that I have ever seen, and it's absolutely incredible. So correct me if I'm wrong, this says Pike County. Pike County became Lamar County, which is present-day Lamar, where we're at. And he was, I guess, an early settler here, founded this Sardis Church, and was really a renowned preacher. So his brother, Pit Milner, that we saw earlier, was also a reverend, and his father, Captain John Milner, was also a reverend. So being a reverend definitely ran in the family. Over here, beside him, is his wife, erected by her children to perpetuate the memory of Eunice Calloway, the best mother, the wife, neighbor, the Christian, born July 19th, 1779, died July 27th, 1848. May her counsel and acts live with thee, and they've concreted this so we can't read the rest of that epitaph. This is also a very incredible box tomb, very common of this era. And what we typically see, we don't typically see one with a headstone tablet that is so very big, but 2 really incredible graves here, and really amazing to see. So he founded the Sardis Church, which was actually right nearby. So we can take you over there and show you where the Sardis Church actually stood and tell you how we know that. So buried just over there is the Reverend John Milner. And if we look over here, we find where the church used to stand. The church used to stand right here. And we know that because the Reverend's son, Jonathan J. Milner, is buried right here. He was born July 15th, 1816, and died November 15th, 1890. I'm assuming this is his wife beside him, Martha D. Milner, born November 12th, 1821, and died December 17th, 1904. So how do we know that the church stood right here? Because of an obituary for Jonathan J. Milner that states that he was buried at the front steps of the church. So because of that obituary, we know the original location of the Sardis Church was founded here in Barnesville, was right here. And this church also served as a hospital during the Civil War, and there are Confederate soldiers who died in that hospital also buried over there behind Reverend John Milner. Like I said, this is an absolutely incredible cemetery. We have Reverend John is right over there, and we are going next to go find John Holmes Milner, the son of Pit Milner and the nephew of Reverend John over there. But this is an incredible cemetery. I definitely want to come back out here sometime in the future, and I could not leave out of here without showing you this incredible headstone first. So now we're in Concord, Georgia, at the Milner family cemetery, and buried here is John Holmes Milner, who was also a reverend. All of these Milners were preachers, as it turns out. John Holmes Milner is the son of Pit Milner, who we saw first, and the nephew of Reverend John Milner, and the grandson of Captain John Milner. Hopefully you can keep all of that straight, because I'm having a hard time doing it myself. So let's just look at this amazing gate out here before we go inside of the cemetery, and then it gets even better gate-wise going in to the cemetery. Look at that, still swings just like new. So in here is John Holmes Milner, and on this gorgeous cast iron gate you see John H. Milner. And if we thought the gate that we walked in coming into this cemetery was beautiful, well, this one definitely tops it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous gate. See these beautiful posts here. And we're going to use utmost care, because it's a little bit loose, and open it up and visit John Hamilton Milner. And we can see that this was the original little family plot in here before it was expanded, and then a later fence was added back there. And in here was just buried John Holmes and his wife. This headstone says, "In memory of Reverend John Hamilton Milner, who was born in Wilkes County, Georgia, July 24th, 1792, and departed this life March 9th, 1857, age 64 years, 7 months, and 13 days. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Sinner saved by grace." That's cool. And then it's got this little neat carving down there, if it shows up on video. And then beside him is his wife, Elizabeth Dabney, wife of elder John Hamilton Milner, born September 13th, 1796, and died June 21st, 1885. So she lived for quite a while after Reverend John did, Reverend John Holmes. Rest in peace. That piece is really worn away until the resurrection morn. So John Holmes and his wife, Elizabeth, and I think it's important to note that the Holmes and John Hamilton Milner, the middle names of these people often really matters in family lineage, because John Hamilton Milner was and I've got to remember this and get this right, John Hamilton Milner's mother was the daughter of John Holmes. John Holmes was another Revolutionary War soldier who seemingly served with or was a friend of Captain John Milner, who died in 1812, and John Holmes was a chaplain in the Revolutionary War. So we have this Holmes surname being passed down as a middle name in here. So he carries not only his father's name, but also his mother's name. And I think that that's really interesting, and also a good way to track down the lineage of certain individuals. So we're going to take a look at who else is buried here. I'm sure there's descendants of these two buried here. When we look at the story of John Hamilton Milner, and some doubt about the family lore gets passed down, we also look at his middle name, Hamilton, and wonder how that came in there. But we also look at the fact that in the DAR letter in 1909, Richard Clark talked about John and Pit fighting together, and we have John and his son Pit that fought together, but that John died in 1812. But Pit Milner, another interesting point about him is John Hamilton Milner's supposed age was, or supposed birth date was 1769 to 1839, which is the exact birth and death dates of Pit Milner. So the question comes up then whether Richard Clark Milner, who relayed this story to the DAR, was getting it confused about which one of his ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War in that way, and whether we have honored the correct John Hamilton Milner in Harris County, Georgia. The way to answer that question is to figure out how John Hamilton Milner ties in to these Milners, which is why we're down here digging into this research. And I bet some of these people who are buried here could have told us right away. And I always think about that when I see some of these more modern era burials here. Behind them, we have two fieldstone box tombs. Now these are, typically speaking, usually pretty early settlement. So it gives wonder as to who may be buried within these box tombs. It's too bad that nobody engraved anything on it.
It's too bad there's not a snake crawling out of it.
We're very glad there's not a snake crawling out of it. Like the other Milner Cemetery in Cleola has a rattlesnake that lives within the fieldstone box tomb there. So here we have Nancy C. Milner, March 14th, 1834 to December 16th, 1918. On the other side, we have Jonathan J. Milner, January 10th, 1831 to June 11th, 1910.
That's the second Jonathan J. Milner we've seen today.
I was just about to
Are
say
you?
that. We've got, once again, a repeating name, although I believe that this is Jonathan James
Oh.
Milner. Is that
Well, at least
correct?
it's- I'm not sure off the top
I
of my head.
believe it is. If not, I'll correct it down in the comments. But we have another Jonathan J. Milner, so
It
we've
just goes
seen
to show how they all name their kids the same.
exactly.
For decades, for generations, they
We've
did
talked
that.
about, what, 3 John Milners today? 4,
Yeah.
including John Hamilton
I mean,
Milner.
technically, this is also a John, right?
That's right. In my Father's house are many mansions, and has a mansion in heaven at the top. There's a child's burial here. George Boardman Milner, born January 21st, 1857, departed this life May 31st, 1858. So we actually have a very early burial of a child out here. This is Norman Willis Reed, was born on the 26th November 1857, and after a brief, is it sojourn? Sojourn?
It's Sojourn, yeah.
And after a brief sojourn, right?
I say Sojourn or Sojourn. I don't know what I say anymore. Pecan.
And after a brief, we'll let Joy read this one.
I don't know about that. I can't see it, sadly, so
No,
Robert
I
will
can
have
put
to
some
do
light
it.
on it
Oh,
for you.
no.
After a brief sojourn,
Norman Willis Reed was born on the 26th November, 1817?
1857,
Oh, 57.
and after a brief
Sojourn.
upon earth of 6 months and 11 days, was transplanted to heaven on the 10th June 1858. Isn't that a sad little stone? Dearest babe, thou hast left us, hear thy loss be deeply felt, but in God that hath, I can't make out the rest, that is called, he can all our sorrows heal. But 'tis God that hath bereft us, he can all our sorrows heal. Again, we just got to look at this amazing gate or fence here. This amazing cast iron fence. And then over here we have more Milner descendants. So this is sacred to the memory of George Willis Milner. Now, Willis is another Milner name that seems to be passed down. We've seen a few Willis Milners.
That was some maiden name originally.
But wasn't there a Willis Milner that founded?
Yes, Willis J. Milner. He's the namesake of Milner, Georgia. He ended up moving away and didn't die here, so he's not buried here. He became something big in the railroad, but...
George Willis Milner, who was born in Jones County, Georgia, August 20th, in the year of our Lord, 1817, and died at his home in Pike County, April 1st, 1900. A sinner saved by grace, written in accordance with his request. I want to point out, too, the Nandina that's growing at the head of his grave, very likely intentionally planted. That stuff never dies. It's a type of bamboo. Sacred to the memory of Mary Boland Milner, born December 28th, 1823 to January 15th, 1893. 74 years and 17 days. Rest, loved one, till the resurrection morn. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. From henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Same one that we read earlier. And the last really older grave is going to be right here. It looks like a child. So this was another John Milner that didn't survive into adulthood. John Pyron, son of G.W. and Mary Milner, born April 22nd, 1857, died August 10th, 1862. Rest, our precious one, till resurrection morn. Then again, when we talk about people who might have all the answers that are buried here, of course we know that the older burials are, but we always kind of look with a little bit of sadness at the people who we missed by not that long ago, like Wiley K. Milner here, who died in 1966. And Lily was her nickname, Sarah E. Milner, October 21st, 1862 to September 10th, 1953. And just think about all the things that she saw in her lifetime. But in tracking down this Milner lineage, this is the most beautiful cemetery that we have come across, and it is really an amazing one. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this video looking into some of your family history and tracking down these Milners in a little bit of a different part of Georgia than we're usually in. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.